how are you all? It's Cloudy. I hope you guys have been well. It's been about a week since I did my last video, and last week was really hectic for me because I had a family emergency and I had a lot of stuff going on. You guys might have noticed as well that this week the backdrop has completely changed. I finally moved back into my apartment near my university, so we're gonna be in this room for the next little while. I've been trying to set up the proper lighting to film, so if there's a little bit of backlight, I apologize for that. As well, there's a little bit of echo in this room, so that might be a slight sound difference. Other than that, everything should resume on schedule. Today I wanted to do a more chill rant to kind of just make up for the lack of videos last week. For today's rant, I'm going to introduce some of my favorite anime soundtracks. Last week I started a new segment called Cloudy Pops, which is very music focused, and going off of that theme, I wanted to introduce to you guys some of my favorites. Now, I don't do top 5, 10, or 20 lists very often. I used to do a few top favorites lists on my blog. I can link you guys that entire category, but today I'm going to specifically focus on all the soundtracks that I really love. The anime soundtrack really hits home for me when the emotions of the anime and the story are brought out more fully and more passionately through the music. And that's really what sticks with me in a soundtrack, because if it's a really good series and it has really great music, I'll listen to the music even after the series has finished. So without further ado, I have about 6 to 7 soundtracks to tell you guys about today. The first soundtrack I want to talk about is the soundtrack for Nagi no Asukara, and it is by Yoshiaki Dewa. If you guys follow my videos, you might know that Nagi no Asukara is one of my all-time favorite anime series, and one of the big reasons for this is because the entire series was so emotional and they took so many themes of love and friendship, and they just reworked it really well into this kind of new world. It mixes fantasy themes with slice of life themes, so if you guys are interested in that, you guys can check out the series. This is one of the soundtracks that has not left my iTunes since I've loaded it. So I have very limited memory on my laptop, so I can't keep all my music. Usually all my music in my iTunes player is what I'm currently listening to, but no matter what I delete, I never get rid of the Nagi no Asukara soundtrack. My favorite track on the Nagi no Asukara soundtrack is A Mother's Hand, and I go back to listen to that so many times. Every time there's an emotional kind of scene or a dramatic build-up, they play this in Nagi no Asukara, and you really get the full force of the emotions in the song, so I really love that song. Because Nagi no Asukara was split up into 2 seasons, you can either listen to the first soundtrack or the second soundtrack. Total, there's about 40-something songs. There's tons to go through. Because Nagi no Asukara is a fantasy series that takes place in an underwater world, a lot of the soundtracks really make you relax. They kind of ebb and flow really nicely, and they're just really good tracks to unwind to. Now, the next one is for a series that is also very similar because it's done by the same company. It is called Shigatsu wa Kimi no Uso. I reviewed Shigatsu wa Kimi no Uso, the anime and the manga, earlier this year. It's one of the biggest new popular slice of life anime. The soundtrack is really amazing because there's about 3 to 4 different kinds of soundtrack. You have the main soundtrack you listen to throughout the story in the anime. So when the anime is playing, you'll hear tracks from the main soundtrack. You also have a set of soundtracks that are just the classical pieces that they play throughout the show. Because Shigatsu wa Kimi no Uso is a music themed anime, there's a lot of classical pieces they use, and they have their own renditions of it. So they take those and then they create another soundtrack with that. As well, there's also some remixed songs of the classical soundtracks. As you listen to the Shigatsu wa Kimi no Uso soundtrack, you not only get the really bright and happy slice of life pieces, you also get the more somber pieces, and it's a soundtrack that's really good for day and night because you have this sort of contrast within the story and within the music. The music is composed by Yokoyama Masaru, so if you guys get a chance, definitely check out the soundtrack. The next 2 soundtracks are composed by probably my favorite composer of all time. Her name is Yuki Kajiura, and she composed Fate Zero and Pandora Hearts. Fate Zero is just an epic. It's an epic styled story that's presented through an anime medium. So if you think of heroes, fighting, combat, battle, life and death, sacrifice, all these themes are explored throughout Fate Zero, and the soundtrack does a really great job of bringing out the intensity of the pacing and the storytelling. My favorite track from the Fate Zero soundtrack is Let the Stars Fall Down. It's the main theme you hear in Fate Zero, and a lot of you guys who are into Fate Stay Night, you guys might have heard of Fate Zero. If you haven't watched it, go watch Fate Zero. If you haven't heard the soundtrack, go download that as well because it's amazing. And Yuki Kajiura just has a really intimate sensitivity with the music and the sounds. One of my favorite tracks from the Pandora Hearts soundtrack is called Lacey. I find the Pandora Hearts soundtrack so amazing. Not only does it do a great job of accompanying the storytelling in Pandora Hearts, I find myself putting on the Pandora Hearts soundtrack when I'm reading the manga. Now, this is kind of a super rare thing for me because when I'm reading manga or I'm flying through a book, I don't like to be interrupted. I kind of like my little silent bubble. It's just such an amazing soundtrack. It has to go with the manga. It has to go with the story. story. When I'm listening to the soundtrack, I have an urge to go read more of the manga. If I'm reading the manga, I want to put on more of the soundtrack. So the soundtrack and the story for me have this sort of like mutual relationship that I can never really get away from, and I love pretty much every single track. Pandora Hearts is kind of like a twisted, more dark rendition of Alice in Wonderland. The range of sounds and tracks go from really cutesy to really funny to a little bit crazy and eccentric, and when you get to the lower pieces in the soundtrack, it is so utterly sorrowful that you can't help but like empathize with the characters. So I really think the soundtrack does an absolutely phenomenal job in Pandora Hearts. It's a shame that the Pandora Hearts anime didn't end well because they gave it an original ending. But anyways, go check out this soundtrack or anything else by Yuki Kajiura because she's also done Sword Art Online and Puella Majima Doka Magica, which are both really great series as well. Next soundtrack is a soundtrack that I don't listen to on a regular basis, but when I get into it, I can really get into like repeating the tracks. It's the soundtrack from Shinichiro Watanabe's new series, Zankyo no Terror, which came out last year. The soundtrack is by Yoko Kanno, and the overall palette of sounds in the soundtrack is much more toned down and subtle. It doesn't jump as much, but it creates a very thick atmosphere when you listen to the soundtrack, and you really kind of get pulled into the full stream of the track list. I find it very difficult to skip songs in Zankyo no Terror because you go from start to finish and you're just kind of moving through the music at the composer's pace. I think this is an amazing thing that Yoko Kanno does. My favorite track from Zankyo no Terror is Vaughn, of course. It's one of the tracks that really stick out to me the most. It really brings out the theme of hope that Zankyo no Terror goes for towards the end, and a sort of like bittersweet kind of hope. Finally, the last soundtrack I want to mention is from K Project, composed by Mikio Endo. K Project is a supernatural, very modern, action-y kind of series. It's very hard to pin K Project into a genre because it's such a unique kind of futuristic world, and the soundtrack goes really well with this because if you heard the soundtrack anywhere else, it kind of reminds you a little bit of elevator jazz music that you hear in like malls. The particular melody progression brings you back to K Project. I don't know what it is about this soundtrack. It uses really nice bright piano. It's very chill and laid back, but I just can't stop thinking about the entire K Project world when I'm listening to the soundtrack. My favorite part of this soundtrack is that it takes its main K Project theme and it reworks it 3 or 4 times throughout the set list. So you'll hear the original, and then you'll hear a piano version, and then you'll hear like another slowed down version or a sped up remix. It gives the music a very consistent tone throughout the series. As well, each character has their own specific theme song within this soundtrack. So anytime a certain character appears on screen, that song will play in the background. And so when you listen to the soundtrack, there's a very specific kind of image and visual that comes to mind when you hear certain songs. My favorite songs on this soundtrack is Mikoto Suo's theme or Anna Kushina's theme. Those are really awesome, but I also really love the main K Project theme. Oh, as a bonus soundtrack, I really wanted to mention the Kengakimi soundtrack, which is by Natsumi Kameoka and Yasunori Mitsuda. Kengakimi is an otome game, so like a girl's romance reverse harem game available on PlayStation. And I didn't play this game, but I had a very good friend who played this game. My housemate here, actually, she played this game. And she was ranting to me throughout all the different routes and the progression of the story. And Kengakimi is a pretty like emotional heavy otome game. It takes place in feudal Japan. As a result, in the soundtrack, you get a lot of like more traditional Japanese sounds to it, as well some more like fantasy elements. Comes in 2 discs. The first disc has about 18 tracks. The second disc is a drama CD for any of you guys who are interested in the voice actors. I really like this soundtrack particularly because I don't know what it is about this soundtrack. It just sounds really nice. I haven't even played the game, but I'm really in love with the soundtrack. You can kind of pick out which songs would be used for which moments in the game. And in this sense, because I've never played the game, the soundtrack gives me some really interesting insight to what the game is about or the kind of tones and the emotions in the game. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of music rant. Let me know what you guys think of any of the soundtracks I've listed. These are probably all of my favorite soundtracks, but I listen to pretty much every soundtrack that comes up for any anime series. If you guys like this video, don't forget to hit like or subscribe for more from me. As well, leave a comment below on any of these soundtracks you might have heard of or any of your favorite tracks that you know from these composers. Until then, I hope you guys are well. Manga Mondays will be coming tomorrow, and I will talk to you guys in my next video very soon. Bye!